The door is locked, not gently closed, locked. Inside the room, there are no lights on except the cold glow of a television flickering in the dark. The curtains are drawn. The air feels heavy, stale, almost untouched by time. And somewhere in that silence, a man is laughing. Not the kind of laughter that comes from joy, not even the kind that comes from madness you can understand. This is something else. If you were standing outside that door, you wouldn't hear words, you wouldn't hear conversation. You would hear fragments, broken sounds, a voice slipping and out of control. And if you stayed long enough, you might start to feel something unsettling, the sense that whoever is inside isn't entirely alone with himself anymore. That man was Heath Ledger, and what was happening inside that room was not just preparation for a role, it was transformation. And the most disturbing part is this: it wasn't an isolated moment. It wasn't a single night of intense method acting. It became routine, a system, a descent. Because to understand what happened to him, you have to understand the world he stepped into. At the time, Hollywood was changing. Superhero films were no longer just colorful fantasies. They were becoming darker, more psychological, more grounded in reality. Audiences didn't just want spectacle anymore. They wanted authenticity. They wanted to believe. And to make people believe in chaos, you need someone willing to embody it completely. That's what Christopher Nolan was building with The Dark Knight. Not just another comic book movie, a world where order and madness collide in a way that feels disturbingly real. And at the center of that world was the Joker. Now, most people think of the Joker as a character, a villain, a performance. But that idea is incomplete, because this version of the Joker wasn't meant to be performed. It was meant to be lived. And that changes everything. If you had walked onto that set, you wouldn't see exaggerated costumes or theatrical acting. You would see something much more subtle and much more dangerous. A character built not on spectacle, but on psychological instability. And that meant the actor playing him couldn't rely on technique alone. He had to disappear. So Heath Ledger did something few actors are willing to do. He isolated himself. For weeks, locked away in a hotel room, cutting himself off from the world. No distractions, no normal rhythm of life, just notebooks, silence, and the slow construction of a mind that doesn't follow rules. You would sit there day after day, trying to imagine how someone thinks when they don't care about consequences, when they don't seek approval, when they don't fear pain. You would write thoughts that don't feel like your own. You would experiment with voices, with movements, with impulses. And at first, it would feel like work. Then, something shifts. Because the human brain is not designed to separate reality and fiction indefinitely. The more you repeat a behavior, the more natural it becomes. The more you explore a mindset, the more familiar it feels. And this is where the story changes tone. Because the Joker is not just chaotic, he is coherent in his chaos. He believes in something, a distorted philosophy, where the world is meaningless, where morality is a joke, where everything eventually breaks. To play that convincingly, you don't just act like him, you start to understand him. And the more you understand him, the harder it becomes to step away. That was the invisible trap. People often say that Heath Ledger lost himself in the role, but that's not entirely accurate. The more unsettling truth is that he found something, a way of thinking that made sense within its own logic. And once you find that, you can't simply ignore it. On set, this manifested in ways that seemed impressive at first. His performance was magnetic, unpredictable. Every movement felt real, every line delivered with an unsettling precision that made the character impossible to look away from.
You would watch him and feel like anything could happen.
And that was exactly the point. But behind that brilliance, something else was building. Because maintaining that level of psychological intensity comes at a cost. The human mind needs contrast. It needs rest. It needs normalcy. It needs moments where it can return to something stable. But when you stay in a state of controlled chaos for too long, the line between control and instability begins to blur. And this is where the myth needs to be broken. Many people believe that what happened to Heath Ledger was simply the result of taking the role too seriously. But that explanation is shallow. Because the real issue wasn't intensity, it was accumulation. Weeks of isolation, endless repetition of a disturbed mindset, sleep disruption, emotional exhaustion. Each of these factors alone is manageable. Together, they create something far more dangerous. And the most tragic part is that it doesn't feel dangerous while it's happening. It feels productive. You feel like you're getting closer to something, like you're unlocking a deeper level of performance, like you're doing what great actors are supposed to do. But what you're actually doing is pushing your mind into a state it was never meant to sustain. And then came the aftermath. Filming ended. The cameras stopped rolling. The Joker was supposed to stay behind. But the body doesn't reset instantly. The mind doesn't just switch off. Sleep became difficult. Restlessness replaced routine. The intensity didn't disappear. It lingered. And this is where the real tragedy begins to take shape. Because the world saw the performance, but it didn't see the cost. It didn't see the nights where the mind refused to slow down. It didn't see the exhaustion building beneath the surface. It didn't see how hard it can be to return to yourself after spending so long becoming someone else. And then, in January 2008, just months before the release of The Dark Knight, Heath Ledger was found dead. The official cause was an accidental overdose of prescription medications. Not one single substance, a combination, a system overwhelmed. And suddenly, everything changed. What had been seen as dedication was now seen through a different lens. What had been praised as brilliance was now inseparable from loss. The performance that would define his career became part of a much heavier narrative. And the most unsettling question lingered in the background. How much of that role did he leave behind? Because when you watch the Joker now, knowing what happened, it feels different. You notice the details, the way he moves, the way he speaks, the way his presence fills the screen with something that doesn't feel entirely constructed. It feels real, too real. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the reason the performance is so unforgettable is because it wasn't just created, it was experienced. And that leaves us with something uncomfortable. Because we celebrate transformation in art. We admire actors who go deeper, who push boundaries, who disappear into their roles. But we rarely ask where the limit should be. We rarely ask what happens when the pursuit of authenticity begins to erode the person behind it. And maybe that's the real story here. Not just about one actor, but about a system that rewards extremes without always acknowledging the cost. Because if you were in that room, alone in the dark, day after day, trying to understand chaos, trying to become it, would you know when to stop? Or would you keep going, believing that the next step would finally complete the transformation? And more importantly, do you think the performance we saw was worth the price that was paid?